The rain beat incessantly against the windows of the old house, a monotonous sound that seemed to echo in every corner of my new room. The drops sliding down the glass appeared to drag along the weight of the memories that permeated that place. I was just beginning to settle in. The boxes were still piled up, some open, others waiting to be unpacked. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the dampness in the air, and the dim light from the hanging lamp created an almost ethereal atmosphere. I sat on the bed, observing the bare walls. The house had a peculiar charm, but also a strangeness that made me feel as if I were being watched. I remembered reading that the house dated back to the 19th century. What might have happened there over the years? My heart raced at the thought of each story those walls could tell. Just a little more organizing and this will feel like a home, I murmured to myself, trying to push away the unsettling feeling settling in my chest. But the truth was, as night approached, the strangeness intensified. With the sound of rain as my soundtrack, I tried to lie down and relax. My eyes slowly closed, and darkness enveloped me like a heavy cloak. However, sleep did not come easily. A sense of alertness remained within me, as if I were waiting for something. And indeed, during the early hours of the morning, I was awakened by a soft whisper. It was almost as if someone were calling me. I jolted awake, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked around, my eyes adjusting to the dimness of the room. That's when I saw her. A pale figure, almost translucent, was sitting beside me on the bed. She was a woman, with long dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Her gaze was deep, melancholic, and there was a pleading expression on her face. "Help me," she whispered, her voice so soft it felt like a breeze. Fear took hold of me, and for a moment, I was paralyzed. I tried to rationalize what I was seeing. It must be just a nightmare, I thought, or my mind playing tricks due to the stress of moving. But the figure remained there, motionless, and the plea for help echoed in my mind like a mantra. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The woman extended her hand toward me, and in a sudden impulse, I closed my eyes tightly, squeezing them shut. When I opened them again, she had vanished. I got up from the bed, trembling. It was just a dream, I told myself. But the sensation lingered, a presence that seemed to have settled in the room. I glanced at the clock and realized it was only 3 in the morning. What should I do? I got up and went to the window, pulling back the curtain and looking out at the rain-soaked street. Fear and confusion swirled within me, and I knew I needed answers. Maybe it was just my imagination, I murmured, but the little voice in my head wouldn't let me be. What if it wasn't? About an hour later, sleep finally returned to me, but the unease still hung in the air. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was already high, and the day seemed normal, almost as if the previous night hadn't happened. But I knew something was wrong. A sense of urgency washed over me, as if that encounter was a warning. I decided I needed to understand what had happened. Breakfast was merely an automatic ritual. The toasted bread and coffee were there, but my mind was far away, immersed in thoughts about the enigmatic figure. What did she want? Who was she? After a quick shower, I resolved that a visit to the local library could help me. The town was small, but the library had a reputation for holding secrets. Upon arriving, the smell of aged paper and dust enveloped me. It was a place where the past seemed ever present. I walked through the aisles, admiring the dusty books. "Hi. Are you looking for something specific?" A voice interrupted my thoughts. It was a young librarian, with large glasses and a welcoming smile. "Actually, I'm interested in the history of this house," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She raised an eyebrow. "Ah, the house on the corner of Main Street. It's an old house, full of stories. Did you know some people claim it's haunted?" "Yes, I've heard some things about that," I said, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "I had a strange experience there last night." Strange experiences are common in houses like that. If you'd like, I can show you some sections on local history. Please. I said, feeling excitement grow within me. I needed to learn more about the woman who had visited me. The librarian guided me to a dusty section where books were arranged on wooden shelves. Here are some books about the city's history and its old houses. You might find something interesting. I flipped through the books, but nothing seemed to catch my attention. Until, in a forgotten corner of the shelf, I spotted an old diary, its yellowed pages promising secrets of the past. The title was almost illegible, but there was something irresistible about how it seemed to call to me. Did you find something? The librarian asked, observing my interest. This diary. It looks old. Can I see it? Of course, but be careful. It might disintegrate easily. I held the diary in my hands, my heart racing. When I opened it, the smell of aged paper and ink filled the air, and the words began to dance before my eyes. It was the diary of a woman named Annabelle, and as I read, a chill ran down my spine. The story unfolding in its pages was tragic, filled with forbidden love and jealousy. Annabelle had lived in a time when interclass relationships were considered taboo. With every word I read, my empathy for her grew within me. I felt there was more to this story than just a romance. I was being drawn into her world. Are you okay? The librarian asked, a concerned look on her face. Yes, I just got a little lost in the reading. She smiled. That happens often here. Stories have that power, don't they? Yes, they really do. I continued to read, completely engrossed in Annabelle's life. But as the letters flowed, a strange sensation began to form again. I felt a presence behind me. I turned quickly, but the library was empty, just me and the librarian. Fear began to mix with curiosity, and at the same time, I felt certain that there was something deeper connecting me to this woman. I concluded that I couldn't ignore what I had felt. The figure of Annabelle was becoming ever more real in my mind, and I needed to understand what she wanted from me. The feeling that the past and present were somehow intertwined intensified, and I knew this was just the first of many revelations to come. The local library felt like a relic of the past, its dark wooden shelves overflowing with books that seemed to guard ancient secrets. The smell of paper and dust filled the air, and I needed a moment to acclimate to the environment. The dim light filtering through the rain-splattered windows created dancing shadows on the walls, as if the very ghosts of the past were whispering among themselves. After the disturbing night I had, I was determined to discover more about that house and, above all, about Annabelle. With a slight tremor in my hands, I held a worn book that spoke of the city's history. I flipped through the yellowed pages, but nothing seemed relevant. My heart raced, and anxiety built up like a weight in my stomach. What I truly wanted was to find something that would explain the pale figure who had appeared in my room, the woman who seemed trapped between two worlds. After a frustrating search, I was drawn to a more secluded section of the library, where the books looked even older. As I pulled a volume with a leather cover, a diary fell from a shelf, landing softly on the floor. Curiosity overtook me. I crouched down, picked up the diary, and examined it closely. The leather was worn, and the metal clasp had rusted, but the thickness of the pages indicated that there was a story waiting to be told. Hashtag, please, let it be something that helps me, I murmured to myself as I opened the diary. The pages were filled with delicate handwriting, and I began to read. My name is Annabelle, the first line said. My breath caught in my throat. The words seemed to dance before me, and I lost myself in the account of a young woman talking about love, pain, and betrayal. He is everything I've ever dreamed of, but the world around us won't allow us to be happy. The words were heavy with emotion, and I could feel the sadness and passion pulsating in every sentence. Forbidden love stories had always fascinated me, but Annabelle seemed different. She described a love intertwined with jealousy and tragedy, a relationship that defied the norms of her society. Her lover was from a rival family, and with each page I turned, I felt more connected to that young woman. She wasn't just a figure from the past, she was a woman who had lived intensely, full of hopes and dreams, just like me. He promised me that one day we would be together, away from all of this, Annabelle wrote on one of the pages. But with every passing day, I feel that dream fading like morning mist. The despair that seeped through her words moved me deeply. I turned a few more pages and found delicate drawings, depicting her and her lover beneath a tree, smiling as if the world around them didn't exist. Why do bad things happen to those who only wish to love? I wrote in my notebook, next to the diary resting in my lap. The rain outside seemed to intensify the melancholy of that story, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Annabelle was trying to tell me something important. As I read, a presence began to manifest around me. It was a subtle but undeniable sensation. A chill ran down my spine, and I glanced quickly over my shoulder, but the library was empty. My only companions were the sound of rain falling outside and the rustling of the pages I turned. I tried to push aside the feeling of fear, focusing back on Annabelle. If I can just understand your past, maybe I can help you, I thought, determined. But the presence didn't dissipate. With each new page, the air seemed to grow denser, and the figure of the woman I had seen in my room appeared to become more real. It was then that I found a passage that left me paralyzed. If anything happens to me, don't let my love die with my body. He is all I have. The desperation in her words almost made me cry. It was as if Annabelle was pleading with me not to let her story be forgotten. Annabelle, what do you want from me? I whispered, feeling the emotion rise. The answer didn't come, but the sensation that I was being watched grew stronger. A mix of fear and curiosity took hold of me, and I felt compelled to return to the book section. That story needed to be uncovered, and I had to understand what was happening. The rain continued to patter against the windows, and a slight tremor coursed through my body as I flipped through the diary once more. The pages seemed to call to me, and I realized that somehow, I had become part of that story. There, lost among Annabelle's words, I understood that she was not just a tormented soul, she was an echo of everything I feared and desired. I can't leave you alone, I murmured, resolute. I will find out the truth about what happened. Determination grew within me as I imagined what could have happened to Annabelle. I needed to know more about this forbidden love and, more importantly, about the tragedy that surrounded her. I was about to rise again when I felt something behind me. A cold shiver ran down my neck, and I turned quickly, but there was no one there. The library remained silent, except for the sound of rain. My senses were on high alert, and a part of me wanted to run. But the other part, the one that cared for Annabelle, held me back. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. You are not alone, Annabelle, I declared loudly, as if that could soothe the spirit watching me. I will help you. The words seemed to float in the air, and for a moment, the atmosphere around me felt different. There was a gentle breeze, as if a presence had approached, and I felt a deep connection with that spirit. With renewed determination, I grabbed my notebook and jotted down the information I had found. Annabelle and her forbidden love, something went wrong, and now she needs help, I wrote as my thoughts began to organize. I needed to go home, but before I left, one last thing caught my attention, a dusty book on a nearby shelf that appeared out of place. Drawn by an inexplicable force, I walked over and pulled it from the shelf. The title was covered in dust, but I managed to read, Forbidden Loves, Stories of Tragedy and Desire. With a mix of excitement and apprehension, I opened the book and began to flip through the pages. What more could I discover about Annabelle? What else could her story reveal? As the rain continued to fall outside, I knew I was just at the beginning of a journey that would lead me to uncover not only Annabelle's past but also what it meant for me and my own life. The weight of what I had found in the diary accompanied me, and the connection I was forming with that spirit grew stronger. The truth was lurking, and I was determined to find it. Returning home after my visit to the library, a feeling of unease still lingered. I didn't know exactly what I was expecting to find, but Annabelle's story was starting to envelop me in a way I hadn't anticipated. The pages of her diary still danced in my mind, filled with love and tragedy, like a distant echo of a past that seemed endless. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the rain began to fall again, creating a somber and melancholic atmosphere. As I walked down the street, I spotted Lucas leaning against his bike, with a curious look and a smile that lit up his face. He always had that ability to bring a little light, even on gloomy days like this. Approaching him, I noticed he seemed eager to hear about my visit to the library. "Hey! What did you find out?" Lucas asked, his eyes sparkling with contagious curiosity. "Hey! I found a diary belonging to Annabelle. Her story is complicated. She fell in love with a man from a rival family and ended up living a forbidden love. It's really tragic," I replied, trying to contain the emotion that began to well up in my chest. "That sounds intense. What else does the diary say?" He leaned in closer, excitement evident in his voice. "Well, it seems her love was wrapped in jealousy and tragedy. I feel like her story is calling to me in some way," I confessed, looking down at the ground, feeling a chill run down my spine. "And it's as if I can feel her pain, Lucas. Like she's trying to tell me something important." Lucas looked at me seriously, as if considering my words. "Maybe you should investigate more deeply. If there's a connection between you, perhaps that explains your visions." The idea of a connection made me uneasy. But at the same time, I realized that was exactly what I wanted, to understand what was happening. We decided to go into the house together, like a team, and explore every corner in search of more clues about Annabelle. ###. As soon as we crossed the front door, a cold wind blew, and the feeling of being watched took hold of me once again. As we explored the rooms, the atmosphere seemed to vibrate with an inexplicable energy. Every shadow appeared to come to life, every noise amplified, and I couldn't shake the sense that something was about to happen. "Look at this!" Lucas exclaimed, pointing to a wall adorned with faded wallpaper. He had found a portrait of a young woman, and I couldn't help but feel shocked as I gazed at the image. It's Annabelle," I murmured, as the woman's gaze in the painting seemed to penetrate through to me. The resemblance was unsettling. Her delicate features and melancholic expression were almost identical to mine. "She looks so much like me, it's as if we're connected in some way." "That's really strange," Lucas whispered, stepping closer to observe the portrait. "Have you ever thought that, in some way, you could be living her story? Like your life is imitating hers?" The thought left me even more uneasy, and a wave of anxiety washed over me. "I don't know, Lucas. It's just a coincidence, right? I can't be Annabelle, I just can't." My voice trembled as I said this. "But you feel it, don't you? That connection?" Lucas insisted, his eyes fixed on mine. "We need to understand what's happening here. This might be more than just a dark fairy tale." I nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Yes, I feel it. But what can we do? Let's keep exploring. Maybe we'll find more clues that help us understand." "If you're having visions of her, maybe she's trying to communicate," Lucas suggested, looking around with determination. With a renewed sense of purpose, we continued to investigate the house. We rummaged through dusty cabinets and examined every corner, but the more we searched, the more oppressive the environment felt. The air was heavy, as if the house was guarding secrets that were about to be revealed. While in one of the rooms, a strange sensation hit me. It was as if I were being watched again, and a soft voice whispered my name. "Annabelle," I stammered, almost against my will. "Did you hear that?" I asked Lucas, my voice trembling. He frowned, looking at me with concern. "What did you hear?" I don't know. It was like a whisper. As if she was trying to call me, I confessed, feeling a chill run down my spine. "We need more information." "Maybe she wants you to discover something," Lucas suggested, his voice serious. Soon, we found an old box on a dusty shelf. Inside were letters and photographs that seemed to belong to Annabelle. As I examined one of the letters, a name caught my attention, Arthur. It was the name of her lover, and something stirred within me. This wasn't just a love story, it was a tale of betrayal, jealousy, and despair. "Look at this," I said, handing the letter to Lucas. "She talks about a plan to escape. Everything was so well planned. But, something went wrong." Lucas read the letter, his face turning into a mask of worry. "This could be the key to understanding what happened. We need to know what happened to her and Arthur." Once we finished exploring the room, we decided to sit and discuss our findings. Lucas seemed as determined as I was to uncover the truth. "You know, Annabelle's story reminds me a little of my own life. Troubled relationships, fears, it's like I'm stuck in a cycle I can't break. Do you really think this could have something to do with you?" I asked, intrigued. "I don't know, but I feel there's something deeper here. Maybe this story isn't just about Annabelle, but also about us. About the choices we make and how they affect us," Lucas replied, his expression reflecting deep introspection. "You're right. I also have my insecurities. Sometimes I feel like I'm trapped in patterns I can't escape," I confessed, looking into his eyes. "It's as if we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. We need to face this. We need to understand what Annabelle was going through so that we can free ourselves too," Lucas said, his voice firm and encouraging. The conversation led us to a deeper place. I began to see Lucas not just as a friend, but as someone who shared a profound understanding of pain and love. There was a growing bond between us, and the idea that we could face the specters of the past together gave me hope. "Let's uncover the truth about Annabelle. Let's honor her memory and free her from this pain," I said, determined. "Yes, together. We can't let her story get lost to time," Lucas agreed, the determination in his eyes mirroring mine. With that renewed determination, we moved to the next room, ready to face whatever awaited us. Annabelle's story was still far from revealed, but now we were in this journey together, and I felt that, in some way, that made all the difference. I woke up with a start, the morning light filtering through the curtains as my heart still raced, as if trying to escape my chest. Annabelle's diary lay open beside me, its yellowed pages revealing secrets that seemed to intertwine with my own life. The feeling that she was trying to communicate with me was palpable, as if the words printed on those pages were waiting to be deciphered. I sat up in bed, still dazed, and picked up the diary. The details of Annabelle's life floated in my mind, as if each sentence was whispering to me. "What do you want from me, Annabelle?" I asked aloud, but the only answer was the echo of my own question. The house was silent, but the atmosphere felt charged with energy, like a violin poised to play a sharp note. I got up, determined to discover more. Below, the sound of rain relentlessly falling on the roof felt like a call, a rhythmic beat urging me to act. I went to the window and looked at the gray sky. "What are you hiding?" I murmured, feeling a mix of curiosity and dread. The diary was not just a recount of the past, it was a portal to something greater, a connection I still couldn't fully comprehend. I descended the stairs, and as I walked, a feeling of weight settled in my chest. The air was thick, as if each breath became an effort. Maybe I should talk to Lucas about this, I thought, remembering his help and how he seemed to understand Annabelle's story. But on the other hand, the idea of involving him more deeply made me anxious. What if I was getting into something I couldn't control? With my decision made, I went to the kitchen and made coffee, trying to gather my thoughts. The warm cup in my hands was a small comfort, but I could barely take a sip before a deep vibration seemed to pass through the house. A loud crash echoed from upstairs, causing my heart to race. What was that? I thought, adrenaline starting to kick in. Cautiously, I climbed the stairs, each step hesitant. The hallway was silent, and the dim light seemed to dance on the walls. As I approached my room, I noticed the door was ajar. "Annabelle?" I called, but received no answer. I pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside. The room was exactly how I had left it, but something felt different. The diary was now closed, as if someone had been there and put it back in order. I felt a shiver run down my spine. This doesn't make sense, I muttered to myself, looking around. Am I going crazy? I glanced back at the diary, which seemed to beckon me. I need to know what you want, I said, resolute. I picked up the diary and sat on the bed, opening it carefully. The pages were marked in some places, as if someone had underlined specific sentences. She was so in love, I read aloud, the words coming to life. But her love was forbidden, and jealousy corroded everything around her. It was as if Annabelle was telling me her personal story, and I couldn't ignore it. With every word I read, the connection between us grew stronger. I could feel her pain, her hopes, and her fears. Annabelle was not just a lost spirit, she was a woman who lived and loved intensely, and her emotions were etched into the pages of that diary. If you had made the right choices. I whispered, but soon realized I was not in a position to judge her. I too struggled with my insecurities and fears. What do you want me to do? I asked again, looking around the room that now seemed brighter. The silence that followed was heavy, as if the house were holding its breath. I decided it was time to dig deeper. There was something in the diary that I couldn't fully understand, something that seemed hidden between the lines. I got up and walked over to the bookshelf, searching for something that might help me unravel the mystery. Among fiction and history books, I found a volume about the city and its old families. Maybe this can give me some clues about Annabelle's life and what happened to her, I thought. As I flipped through the pages, one phrase caught my attention: the rivalries between families were never just a matter of status, but of broken hearts and unfulfilled promises. My thoughts flew to Lucas and our conversation about Annabelle's story. He needs to know this, I thought, feeling our connection deepen. I descended again, determined to find him. When I reached the library door, I found Lucas sitting in one of the chairs, surrounded by books. He looked up and smiled when he saw me. "Hey, you look a bit pale. Did something happen?" he asked, concern evident in his eyes. I found more information about Annabelle, I replied, trying to hide the intensity of what I had just discovered. The rivalry between her family and her lovers was much deeper than I imagined. She was caught in a cycle of love and jealousy, and it led her to a tragic fate. Lucas frowned, intrigued. "What do you mean?" I found her diary. There are parts that talk about how her love was forbidden, and how it affected not only her life but everyone around her. It seems there were secrets that no one ever told, I explained, feeling the tension rise. I think this might help us understand what really happened. He leaned forward, his eyes shining with curiosity. "Did you find anything specific that might indicate what happened to her?" "Yes, but it's still unclear. There are mentions of a secret that Annabelle kept, something that could change everything," I said, feeling my heart race. "But the atmosphere in the house feels different. I sense that something is about to happen, and I don't know if I'm ready for it." "Maybe we should prepare to investigate further," Lucas suggested, his expression serious. "If her spirit is trying to communicate, she might need help resolving these lingering issues." "I'm willing to find out, but what if it becomes dangerous?" I asked hesitantly. The thought of confronting the spirit of someone so marked by pain left me uneasy. What if Annabelle isn't ready to let the past go? We have to try. If she is reaching out to you, it means there's a connection. And if she is becoming more aggressive, it could be a sign that time is running out, Lucas replied, his voice firm. "We are in this together." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. "All right. Let's investigate more about Annabelle's family and uncover what else she is hiding. I can't let this story end without the truth coming to light." With a newfound determination, we made our way back to the library, ready to unravel the mysteries that awaited us. The house seemed to pulse around us, as if it were alive, waiting for us to reveal its secrets. And as we delved deeper into Annabelle's story, a feeling that we were about to cross a dangerous line began to settle in my heart. The past was about to unfold, and I knew there was no turning back. Night had fallen like a heavy cloak over the old house where I now lived. The sound of rain tapping against the windows was a constant reminder of how out of place I still felt. After the disturbing visions and Annabelle's enigmatic presence, I knew I had to confront what was happening. The spirit seemed to have a message, something I couldn't decipher, but that was beginning to intertwine with my own story. When I found Lucas that morning, he looked as intrigued as I was. The way his eyes sparkled while talking about Annabelle's history made me realize I wasn't alone in this quest. It was as if, somehow, he was just as immersed as I was in the complexity of that tale of love and tragedy. After discussing the discoveries from the diary, an idea took shape in my mind. I needed to confront the figure that haunted me. Lucas, have you ever thought about how it would be if we could connect with Annabelle's spirit? I asked, anxiety growing as the words left my mouth. I feel like she needs help, and maybe if we try to communicate, we can discover what she wants. He hesitated, looking at me with a mix of concern and curiosity. You're talking about a séance? That can be dangerous, you know. What if she doesn't like our presence? What if what she wants isn't something we're ready to handle? I know, but I need to understand, I replied, my voice firm. She reached out to me for a reason, and if there's something she wants to tell us, I can't ignore it. We can't let fear stop us from seeking the truth. Lucas let out a deep sigh, as if weighing each word. All right. If you think this is what we should do, I will be by your side. But we need to proceed with caution. We decided that the best way to conduct the séance would be in my room, where I had felt Annabelle's presence most intensely. The following afternoon, I prepared the space. I turned off the lights, leaving only a few candles lit, their flames flickering, dancing to the rhythm of the wind that blew through the window. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and I found myself staring at the diary in which Annabelle confessed her pains and desires. That was the key to her heart. What do you think we should do? Lucas asked, his voice echoing softly in the dim light. We should focus, maybe call her, I suggested, my heart racing. If she can hear us, we want her to know we are here to help. He nodded, and together we began to invoke Annabelle's presence. I closed my eyes and sought to connect with the energy around me. Annabelle, I called in a whisper. We are here. If you can hear us, please manifest. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the tension in the air, as if the very environment were holding its breath. Then, a cold breeze swept through the room, and I opened my eyes quickly, sensing her presence drawing near. Annabelle, my voice came out almost as a thread. Are you here? And then, as if the shadows around me had taken form, the pale figure of Annabelle appeared before me. Her deep, sorrowful eyes seemed to pierce through me, as if she were trying to convey a message, a pain I still didn't understand. The lament that echoed through the room made my heart stop for a moment. It was a mix of despair and hope. I can hear you. I exclaimed, my voice trembling. What do you need? Annabelle approached slowly, her gaze pleading for understanding. The air was heavy, and a sense of desperation enveloped me. I knew I had to be strong, this moment was crucial. Please, speak to me, tell me what is happening. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, a sound like a deep lament filled the space, and I felt the pain in her heart. I don't want you to suffer as I suffered, she finally said, her voice a whisper almost inaudible, like a gentle breeze. I need you to understand. I want to understand, Annabelle. Please help me. I implored, feeling the urgency of her message. Lucas also positioned himself beside me, and I could see the tension on his face. Hashtag Annabelle, we know about your love, your story, and we want to help resolve this. What do you need us to do? The figure of Annabel hesitated for a moment, as if weighing our intentions. Then she looked directly at Lucas, and a glimmer of recognition passed through her eyes. "You don't know, the truth hides in the shadows," she said, her voice now clearer but still heavy with pain. "You must uncover what has been concealed." "How can we do that?" I asked, feeling the desperation rise within me. "What do we need to know?" She hesitated again, and I sensed there was something deeper, something she was reluctant to share. "Love is a prison, and the truth can set you free," she whispered, and the words echoed in my mind like a mantra. "Free you from what?" Lucas questioned, his voice firm yet laden with concern. "What do you need to be freed from, Annabel?" Her eyes shone with a mixture of sadness and hope. "The pain of a lost love. The legacy of the lies surrounding it. You must know the truth, not only for me but for all those still trapped by it." "We're here to help, Annabel," I said, feeling that this was the key. "But we need you to tell us what happened. What did you suffer?" She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, there was determination in her gaze. "The love between him and me was impossible. The families were at odds, and I paid the highest price. What you must discover is hidden in a place that has long been forgotten." "A place? Where?" I asked, perplexed. "In the house. The truth is in the walls," Annabel replied, and her figure began to dissipate, like smoke in the sunlight. "Find what has been buried, and everything will be revealed." The connection broke, and I found myself alone again, heart racing and mind filled with questions. What did she mean by, "the truth is in the walls"? What else would I need to uncover? "Are you okay?" Lucas asked, his hand touching my shoulder as if trying to anchor me back to reality. "Yes," I replied, although I was far from okay. "But now I know we need to investigate the house more thoroughly. There's something hidden there, and we need to find out what it is." Lucas nodded, his expression serious. "Yes, we need to. And maybe this is the key to freeing her. But we need to be careful. We don't know what else might be waiting for us." I looked at him, feeling a growing connection between us. "Let's find this truth, Lucas. For Annabel. And for ourselves." With renewed determination, we began to plan our next step. The search for the truth was just beginning, and I knew that Annabel's story still had much to reveal. The next morning felt darker than the previous ones. The sky was overcast, and the atmosphere in the house carried a weight I could not ignore. Annabel's diary still lay open on the table beside me, its yellowed pages seeming to call me to read more. There was something in its content that intrigued me, something I hadn't fully comprehended during my first reading. With a cup of coffee in hand, I sat down at the kitchen table, surrounded by oppressive silence. The pale light streaming through the window could not dispel the discomfort I felt. The weight of the diary in my mind was almost tangible. She had a secret, I thought, recalling the lines I'd read the night before, something that could change everything. What could that secret be? What was I not seeing? I decided I needed to discover more. The diary still had several unread pages, and I was determined to unveil what Annabel wanted to tell me. I glanced at the clock and realized it was time to meet Lucas. He was just as intrigued as I was by Annabel's story, and together we might make more progress. I arrived at the local library and found Lucas sitting at a table, his eyes lost in the pages of an old book. He looked up when he saw me, and a smile lit up his face. "Good morning. You won't believe what I found," he said, closing the book and leaning forward. "Good morning. What is it?" I asked, eager to hear the news. While I was searching for more information about Annabel's family, I found a reference to an event that might be related to what happened to her. It's an old letter mentioning a midnight meeting between Annabel and her lover. He paused, gauging my reaction. If they had a plan to run away, it means there was hope, right? But what if things didn't go as planned? This is incredible. We need to find that letter, I said, adrenaline already coursing through my veins. Do you know where it is? Yes, it seems to be kept in an archive at the back of the library. Shall we go? Lucas suggested, getting up quickly. I followed Lucas to the archive. The air was thick with the smell of aged paper and dust. He began rummaging through the shelves while I watched, my heart racing with anticipation. Finally, Lucas stopped and held up an old folder, his eyes shining with the thrill of discovery. Here it is. Let's see what we have, he said, carefully opening the folder. The letter was yellowed and slightly torn at the edges but still legible. Do you want to read it? He offered, passing it to me. With my hands trembling from anxiety, I took the letter and began to read aloud. My beloved, if you are reading this, it's because I finally found the courage to leave everything behind. We cannot continue living in the shadows of our families. The love we feel for each other is stronger than any rivalry. I'll meet you in the clearing at midnight. We must flee before it's too late. With love, Annabelle. This is it. They really planned to run away, I said, excitement building within me. But something went wrong. They never managed to escape. And what happened to Annabelle? What stopped her from moving on? Lucas murmured, deep in thought. We need to understand more about the rivalry between the families. There might be more information in old newspapers or other documents. What else can we uncover about what happened that night? As we talked, I felt the sensation of a familiar presence starting to envelop me. It was as if Annabelle were there, listening to our words, hoping we would find the answers she so desperately sought. The diary and the letter were just fragments of a much deeper story that we still needed to explore. We have to investigate the relationship between the families. If Annabelle's lover was involved in something dark, it could have contributed to her tragic fate, I suggested, while Lucas nodded. Yes, and maybe we can find witnesses who remember what happened back then. It's a small town, and stories are often passed down through generations, he said, his expression determined. With this new impetus, we left the library and decided to start our search for information in the town. Every corner seemed to carry an echo of the past, and the sense of urgency grew within me. Annabelle's spirit was present, and I could feel her guiding me. We headed to the town square, where the older residents often gathered. The first person we encountered was Dona Clara, an elderly woman with gray hair and eyes that seemed to hold many stories. She was sitting on a bench, watching the children play. Good morning, Dona Clara. May I ask you some questions about the old rivalry between the families in town? I asked, trying to sound friendly. She turned her head slowly, her eyes narrowing. Ah, the story of the rivalry. It's a sad tale, my dear. The young ones no longer know about it. But the pain still lingers, like a shadow. Could you tell us what happened? About Annabelle and her lover? Lucas asked, encouraging her to continue. Dona Clara hesitated, looking around as if afraid to be overheard. I don't know if I should speak of it. People are afraid to remember. The past can be dangerous. Please, Dona Clara. We're trying to understand what happened to help Annabelle find peace, I said, my sincerity evident in my voice. She sighed, her expression sorrowful. Annabelle and her lover were soulmates, but their families never accepted that love. #### What happened that night? Well, many say that their love was what brought the tragedy. Her spirit still wanders here, waiting for someone to uncover the truth. But what really happened? Lucas insisted, his voice firm. It was a rainy night, like today. There are rumors that someone saw them in that clearing. Then, Annabelle was found lifeless, and her lover vanished. No one knew what had happened to him, and the pain of loss divided the families forever. Dona Clara looked at us, her gaze penetrating. But you shouldn't get involved with things that are buried. The past can be more powerful than you imagine. Those words echoed in my mind, and an unsettling feeling took hold of me. What else had she hidden? What more was Annabel trying to tell me? Thank you, Dona Clara. If you learn anything else, please let us know, I said, as Lucas and I moved away, feeling the weight of the revelations. Be careful, children. The past does not forgive, she whispered as we walked away. As we walked through the town, the tension increased. I didn't know what to expect, but I felt that we were getting closer to the truth. The diary, the letter, and now Dona Clara's testimony were pieces of a puzzle that, when assembled, could finally reveal what had happened to Annabel and her lover. Do you think Dona Clara was hiding something? Lucas asked, breaking the silence that had settled between us. Maybe. She seemed fearful, as if she knew more than she was willing to share, I replied, thoughtful. We need to investigate more. There's something we're not seeing. He nodded, his look determined. Let's go back to the library and see if we can find more records, maybe even newspapers from that time. We need to uncover what happened that fateful night. I agreed, my heart racing. The mystery was deepening, and with each new discovery, the figure of Annabel seemed to draw nearer, enveloping me in her pain and despair. What more did she want me to know? What else did I still have to discover? As we returned to the library, the feeling that the past was rising to confront us grew. And I knew there was no turning back. We were on a journey that would not only reveal the truth about Annabel but also lead us to confront our own fears and insecurities. The pressure in the air was palpable as Lucas and I ventured through the streets of the town. The overcast sky seemed to reflect the tension that hung over us. The dry leaves danced in the wind, and every step we took toward Dona Edite's house, the oldest woman we knew, echoed the urgency of our mission. I knew she had many stories to tell, stories that could help us understand what had happened to Annabel. Do you think she will want to talk? I asked, breaking the silence that stretched between us. Lucas looked at me, his face serious. She may hesitate, but I'm sure she knows the story. And if she does, we need her to tell us. When we arrived at Dona Edite's house, we knocked on the weathered door. The sound echoed through the deserted street. It wasn't long before the door opened, revealing a woman with white hair and a weary expression. She looked at us with a mix of curiosity and concern. Who are you? She asked, her voice carrying the weight of many years. Hi, Dona Edite. We are history students and we're investigating the town's past, and especially Annabel's story, Lucas replied, trying to sound friendly. Her eyes narrowed. Annabel? Her spirit still haunts this house, you know that, don't you? I felt a chill run down my spine. Yes, we know. That's why we're here. We want to understand what happened to her. She hesitated, glancing aside as if weighing her words. Many prefer not to speak about this. What happened was tragic and dangerous. Please, we need to know. The town deserves to know the truth, I insisted, trying to convey the urgency of our quest. Dona Edite took a deep breath and invited us in. The interior of the house was dark, with old furniture covered in white cloths. She led us to a living room where a framed portrait of a young woman caught my attention. It was Annabel. She was so beautiful, I murmured, admiring the delicate features of the woman in the painting. And so unhappy, Dona Edite said, her voice filled with compassion. The love she had was impossible. Her family, well, they did not accept the relationship. Did you know who her lover was? Lucas asked, leaning forward, intrigued. Yes, she replied, her expression turning somber. He was a young man from the rival family. Their love was a taboo, and when they found out, the tragedy began. But what happened? I asked, barely able to contain my anxiety. They say she was murdered, but we don't know who did it. Dona Edite stood up and began to walk around the room, as if reliving painful memories. Many years ago, when Annabel and her lover planned to flee, her family followed them. A fight broke out and, well, they couldn't escape. And what happened to Annabel? Lucas questioned, his voice steady. She was found dead, but the truth was never revealed. The whole town went silent, fearing the consequences. Her spirit became trapped here, seeking justice. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy. I felt a shiver run down my spine. And do you know who was responsible for her death? Dona Edith hesitated again, her gaze distant. Some say it was her brother. Others believe it was one of the men from the rival family. But no one ever had the courage to speak openly about it. Aren't you afraid to talk? I asked. She looked at me, challenging my gaze. Fear has always been present. But for Annabelle, I would do anything. Can you help us discover the truth? We need more information, Lucas pleaded, his voice full of hope. I don't know if I can, she replied, her voice trembling. But I can try. Anything you can tell us will be useful, I said, feeling that we were getting closer to something important. Dona Edith went to a shelf and pulled out an aged wooden box. Here are some old letters, documents that might help. But be careful, what you discover may not be what you expect. Deep down, I knew that what we were about to uncover could change everything. I took the box, its weight reflecting the seriousness of the situation. Thank you, Dona Edith. We will make the best of this, Lucas said, his gratitude sincere. As we prepared to leave, the woman stopped us at the door. Don't forget, if Annabelle's spirit appears to you, she may not be so friendly. Her pain is deep. We will do our best to help her, I assured her, my voice steady, but my heart raced. As we left the house, the tension hung in the air. Do you think we got something useful? I asked Lucas. I hope so. These letters may give us clues about what really happened, he replied, his gaze determined. We returned to my room, where we spread the letters out on the table. The dim light from the lamp cast shadows on the walls, creating an atmosphere suitable for the tension we were about to face. Let's start reading, Lucas suggested, opening one of the letters. If Annabelle's story is as tragic as it seems, we need to understand everything. We began to read aloud, each word revealing more about Annabelle's forbidden love and the intrigue surrounding her life. With each letter, the narrative grew darker, and the feeling that we were being watched intensified. Look at this, Lucas said, his voice almost a whisper. She mentions a secret meeting at night, where she planned to flee with her lover. This is crucial, I said, feeling adrenaline surge. If we can find out more about this meeting, maybe we can understand what went wrong. We continued to read, each letter more revealing than the last. We were absorbed by the past, as if reliving Annabelle's pain and passion. But deep down, the unease persisted. Do you feel that? Lucas asked, interrupting my thoughts. What? ###, I responded, unable to divert my gaze from the cards. The presence, it's as if we're being watched, he said, his eyes scanning the room. My heart raced. Yes, I feel it. It's like Annabelle is here, waiting for us to uncover the truth. The tension mounted with each passing second. I looked at the card Lucas was holding. Let's continue. We need to know what happened that fateful night. But before we could resume reading, a noise from the kitchen made us stop. The sound of glass shattering, followed by a faint whisper that seemed to echo through the house. Did you hear that? Lucas asked, his face pale. Yes, I replied, my throat dry. Let's check it out. We both stood up, fear and curiosity propelling us forward. We walked slowly toward the kitchen, each step echoing in the silence of the house. When we arrived, the light was flickering, and a glass lay shattered on the floor. Dona Edith? I called, but received no response. Instead, a cold breeze swept through the kitchen, sending a deep chill down my spine. This is strange, I murmured, looking at Lucas, who looked as pale as I felt. We should go back, he suggested, but an invisible force seemed to keep us rooted in place. Then we heard a whisper, clearer now. Help, help, my heart raced in my chest. It was Annabelle's voice. She was here, closer than ever. "Annabelle?" I called, my voice trembling. "What do you need?" A heavy silence followed, and the temperature dropped even further. I looked at Lucas, whose eyes were wide. "We're here to help you. We want to know the truth." The whisper echoed again, louder, almost like a silent scream. "Justice, justice, justice. What do you mean?" I asked, desperate to understand. But before we could receive an answer, the kitchen light flickered one last time and then went out completely, plunging us into oppressive darkness. "Lucas, I'm scared," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Stay close to me," he replied, gripping my hand tightly. In that moment, I realized we were deeply immersed in something beyond ourselves. Annabelle's story was not just a mystery to be solved, it was a call. And as darkness enveloped us, the cobblestone streets were hushed by the twilight of night, and the air was thick with the humidity that precedes a storm. The weight of the investigation I was conducting about Annabelle and her tragic fate seemed to follow me like a shadow. My mind, already overloaded with information and emotions, led me to the ancestral home of the rival family, a place that had always intrigued me. What I didn't expect was that the confrontation I was about to have with one of the descendants of that family would become a pivotal moment in my journey. I arrived at the old mansion, surrounded by leafy trees that seemed to whisper secrets with every gentle movement of the wind. The place was enveloped in mystery, and the atmosphere weighed on me as if the house itself was aware of what I had come to seek. As I approached the door, a sense of apprehension settled in my chest. The truth was there, waiting to be unearthed, but at what cost? I pressed the doorbell, and the sound echoed through the silence of the night. The door opened slowly, revealing a tall man, his features seemingly sculpted by history itself. His eyes were deep, as if holding secrets he would never reveal. He stared at me for a moment, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "You're the new resident of Annabelle's house, aren't you?" he asked, his voice low and grave. "Yes," I replied, trying to keep my composure. "I'm here, about Annabelle. I need to talk to you." "Come in," he said, opening the door a bit wider, allowing me to cross the threshold, as if inviting me to a game of chess where every move could be crucial. I was welcomed into a dark corridor, with black and white photos of ancestors that seemed to watch every step I took. The air was filled with the scent of aged wood and unresolved mysteries. He guided me to a living room, where the soft light of a lamp illuminated the space, highlighting a large portrait of a woman I couldn't ignore. It was Annabelle. "You look like her," he commented as I fixed my gaze on the painting. "Many say her spirit still roams here, seeking justice. I also feel her presence," I confessed, my heart racing. "And that's why I'm here. I'm trying to uncover the truth about what happened." He looked at me with a mix of curiosity and distrust, as if I were a stranger in a territory he considered safe. "And you think I can help with that?" "I don't know," I replied hesitantly. "But you might know more than you're willing to reveal." He settled into an armchair, crossed his legs, and watched me with an intense gaze. "Annabelle's story is complicated. Her family and mine, we've always had a troubled relationship. There's a lot of resentment between our clans, and many prefer to leave the past buried. But she deserves for the truth to be known," I argued, trying to convince him. "We can't let what happened to her be forgotten." He sighed, and for a moment, the weight of history seemed to bear down on his shoulders. "You have no idea what you're asking. Revealing the truth could bring to light things that many prefer to keep hidden. Annabelle's story is just a fragment of a much larger picture." "Maybe that picture needs to be exposed," I said, trying to appeal to his sensibility. "If there's anything you know, any information that could help me, I implore you to tell me." "You're brave," he replied, his voice now softer. "But bravery comes at a price. Are you willing to pay it?" Before I could respond, he stood up and began to pace the room, as if weighing what I could do with this information. "I'll tell you one thing," he said, stopping in front of Annabelle's portrait. "But you must understand that this could change everything between us. The ties between our families are stronger than you imagine." "I understand," I replied, my heart racing. "Please, just tell me what you know." He turned to face me, his eyes now filled with a determination I hadn't seen before. "The truth is that Annabelle and her lover were not just victims of a forbidden love. There are family secrets that were buried with them. What happened that fateful night was not just an act of jealousy, but something much darker." "Darker how?" I asked, curiosity consuming me. "Annabelle's story is not just about love and tragedy, but also about revenge and betrayal. Her family was not just the target of a forbidden love, they were involved in an ancient feud that stretched across generations. Annabelle was a pawn in that game, and many were willing to sacrifice everything for it." His words resonated in my mind, and a sense of dread began to form in my stomach. "Are you saying there was more at stake than just her love?" "Exactly," he confirmed. "And her lover, he may have been the most innocent of all, but the interests of their families were at stake. There are those who would do anything to protect their own secrets." "And do you know who did this?" I asked, urgency creeping into my voice. He hesitated for a moment, as if weighing what I could do with this information. "I'm not sure, but what I can tell you is that the descendants of both families still carry these wounds. And there are those who believe that Annabelle's death was not an accident, but an execution." The atmosphere in the room shifted, and the air felt heavier. I could sense that we were approaching a point of no return. "I need to know more," I insisted. "If there's anything you can show me, any clue that could help, I need it." He moved toward a shelf filled with ancient books and began searching for something. "There's a diary that belonged to one of my ancestors. It might contain information you're searching for. But understand, by reading it, you might invoke more than just the truth of Annabelle. You might awaken the ghosts of our past." ####, I'm ready, I declared, determined. I can't turn back now. Finally, he found the diary and handed it to me. The cover was worn, and the pages appeared almost yellowed with age. "Be careful with what you discover," he warned. "Not everything written in there will be easy to swallow." As I examined the diary, the atmosphere in the room seemed to grow heavier, and a strange sensation enveloped me. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the space, and I turned quickly, feeling that something was about to happen. "Do you feel that?" I asked, sensing the icy air brush against my skin. "Yes," he replied, his eyes widening. "Annabelle's presence is strong here. She's trying to communicate." The tension escalated, and before I could process what was happening, a figure appeared before us. It was Annabelle, clearer than ever. Her gaze was filled with pain and despair. "You must help me," she whispered, her voice echoing in the room like a lament. "The truth must be revealed." I fixed my gaze on her figure, fear mingled with unwavering determination. "We're here, Annabelle. We will find out what happened to you." The man beside me seemed paralyzed, his eyes glued to the apparition that was slowly fading. "She's trying to tell us something," he murmured, his voice trembling. "We need to understand what she wants." "Yes," I agreed, my heart racing in my chest. "And we will do this together." Annabelle's figure vanished, but her presence lingered, like a distant echo. I knew we were about to cross a line that could never be undone, but all I wanted was to bring the truth to light, not just for her, but for all of us. The night felt heavy, as if the air in my room was charged with palpable electricity. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I had locked myself in there, determined to unravel what Annabelle truly wanted from me, and the atmosphere was saturated with an almost unbearable tension. Her diary, which I had read so many times, lay open before me, its yellowed pages filled with secrets and pain. What more could be hidden in the lines of her story? What did she want me to understand? I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. With each beat, I felt I was on the verge of discovering something crucial. The visions intensified, and the image of the pale woman who haunted me was now more vivid in my mind than ever. "Annabelle," I murmured, as if the simple act of saying her name could invoke her presence. "What do you want from me?" The silence in response was deafening, but not for long. The temperature in the room began to drop, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. The moonlight seemed to pulse, and the shadows grew denser, as if something was about to manifest. Then, slowly, her figure began to materialize before me, so ethereal and sorrowful. The sadness in her eyes had transformed from mere pleading to an urgency I couldn't ignore. "Annabelle," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm here. I'm listening." She glided closer, and I could see the sorrow in her gaze. There was something familiar in her expression, something that reminded me of my own insecurities. "You know I'm trapped here," she whispered, her voice like a gentle breeze caressing my face. "I need you to understand, to free my soul." "Your soul?" I asked, fighting against the wave of emotions that surged within me. "But how? What do you need me to do?" She hesitated, as if struggling to find the words. "The name," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "The name I carry is the key to my past. No one has ever dared to reveal it." "What name? What does that mean?" I was confused, but the intensity of her gaze encouraged me to press on. "Annabelle, please. If you tell me, I can help." Her figure seemed to waver, as if battling against an invisible current. I can't. Fear holds me back. The same fear that trapped me here, that made me suffer in silence. "But you don't have to be afraid anymore," I said, more confidently than I felt. "I'm here. I won't let you suffer again. We'll resolve this together." She raised her hand, and I felt a wave of cold wash over me at her touch. "You don't understand, it's more complicated than that. The love I had, the betrayal, all of it intertwines in a name. A name that, if revealed, could bring forth the truth many fear." The tension in the room escalated, and I felt time running out. "Annabelle, please. What are you trying to tell me? What is the name?" She closed her eyes, and for a moment, the room fell silent. I could hear my own heart beating, each thump a reminder that I was there, in that space, trying to help her. Then, she opened her eyes, and the intensity of her gaze made me feel as though I was being drawn into an abyss. I can't tell you directly," she replied, her voice trembling. "But you must look within yourself. The answer is already in you. The name you seek is a shadow of my past, and also of your life." My heart raced. "Within me? What do you mean by that?" I wasn't sure if I was ready for this revelation, but at the same time, a part of me desperately wanted to understand. "You are a part of what I was," she said, her voice now almost a lament. "And what you fear, I also feared. Betrayal, love, pain, it connects us in ways you have yet to comprehend." The moonlight seemed to shine more brightly, and I felt we were on the brink of crossing a boundary that had never been crossed before. "Annabelle, I need to know. What are you trying to tell me?" She hesitated once more, and the expression on her face was a mixture of pain and hope. "The name, dear, is an echo of the past. An echo that repeats. The love I lost, and that you also seek. The name is Lucas." The world around me seemed to stop. Lucas. The young historian who had become my ally, to whom I had confided my insecurities and fears. The same Lucas who appeared intrigued by Annabelle's story, and who seemed to have an inexplicable connection to me. "Lucas?" I whispered, confusion and fear intertwining in my heart. "Yes. He is the key," Annabelle affirmed, her voice now stronger. "Not just the name, but what it represents. The pain, the betrayal, the love, all of it is interconnected. You must confront him, not only for me but for yourself. I felt a knot form in my stomach. But how can I do that? I asked, my voice faltering. You need to have courage, Annabelle said, her image beginning to fade. Courage to face what is hidden. You cannot allow yourself to be a prisoner of the past. The truth must be revealed, even if it hurts. Annabelle, wait. I shouted, but her figure began to disappear, dissolving like a dream upon waking. Don't go. I need more answers. Find the truth, and you will find my freedom, were her last words, echoing in the darkness of my room, before her presence completely dissipated. I remained there, alone, with Annabelle's diary open in my lap and a wave of revelations swirling in my mind. Lucas. The name that now carried immense weight. How was he connected to all of this? What did I really know about him? Annabelle's words reverberated in my heart, and I knew I needed to confront the young historian, not only to understand his connection to the past but also to confront my own fears. The moonlight still illuminated the room, but now it felt more like a beacon of hope than a source of fear. With renewed determination, I stood up, resolved to uncover the truth hidden in the shadows of the past and to free both Annabelle and myself. The night was heavy, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The silence was interrupted only by the distant sound of rain tapping against the windows, as if it were a warning of something about to happen. I was locked in my room, the dim light of the candle casting dancing shadows on the walls. Hashtag Annabelle's diary lay open before me, its yellowed pages seemed to pulsate with the energy of her unfinished story. The revelation of the name she whispered in my mind wouldn't leave me in peace. What did it mean? The connection between Annabelle, Lucas, and me was becoming increasingly clear, but I still struggled to understand the depth of that bond. The weight of the revelation transformed into a knot in my stomach. Lucas, I murmured to myself, feeling my heart race. What do you know? The thought of confronting him made me uneasy, but there was no room for doubt anymore. I needed the truth, not only for Annabelle but also for myself. Finally, courage took hold of me. I stood up, feeling the cold floor beneath my bare feet, and walked to Lucas's room. The door was ajar, and the lamp's light illuminated his face, which was lost in thought. He didn't hear me enter, and for a moment I hesitated, watching him. Lucas was so immersed in his own concerns that he seemed oblivious to the storm of emotions boiling inside me. Lucas, I said, breaking the silence that separated us. He turned quickly, his eyes wide. There was something in his gaze that made me feel he knew this moment would come. Hey, are you okay? He stood up, but his tone was cautious, as if he were trying to gauge the tension in the air. No, I'm not okay. I took a deep breath, my thoughts swirling. Annabelle's figure, she whispered a name to me, and now I need to understand. We need to talk about this. Lucas hesitated, his gaze drifting for a moment. What did you hear? His voice was tense, and I realized he was struggling to maintain composure. I don't know exactly what it means, but I feel like you know more than you're telling me. You are a descendant of her lover, aren't you? The question slipped out like a whisper, but the emotional weight behind it was palpable. He sighed, a visible burden settling on his shoulders. Yes, I am. But it's not as simple as it seems. There was a fragility in his voice that made me feel empathy for him, but the urgency of the situation wouldn't allow me to retreat. Then explain it to me, Lucas. What do you know about Annabelle? Why didn't you tell me before? He stepped back slightly, as if trying to find the right words. The story of my family and hers is intertwined in a web of secrets and lies. Their love was forbidden, and the tragedy that followed left deep marks on all of us. Marks you still carry? I couldn't contain my curiosity. You said you wanted to unravel the story, but now it seems like you're hiding from it. Lucas looked down, the conflict evident on his face. I always wanted to understand, but there's a fear that has been passed down through generations. My family, they never wanted the truth to come to light. What happened to Annabelle wasn't just a tragedy, but a warning. Her pain became a legacy. But what if that pain is imprisoning you too? I said, trying to make him see the truth. You are a victim of this story, just like Annabelle. We can't let the past continue to control us. He finally lifted his eyes to mine, and there was an intensity in them that left me speechless. What if I can't break free? What if history repeats itself? I don't want to be responsible for more pain. The vulnerability in his voice was striking, and I realized he needed support as much as I did. We need to face this together, Lucas. I can't do it alone, and you don't have to do it alone. The idea that history might be repeating itself hit me like a blow. Annabelle wanted justice, but she also wanted us to understand that we were more than just pieces in a game that started long before us. You're right, he said, his voice now firmer. The truth needs to be revealed, not just for Annabelle, but for ourselves. If I am a descendant of her lover, then the responsibility is mine too. I never wanted to carry that weight, but now I know I can't run away. We need to find a way to free Annabelle and, at the same time, break the chains that bind you to the past. The idea made me anxious, but there was a growing determination within me. Let's uncover the truth and tell her story, even if it means facing our own pain. Lucas nodded, and I saw a new determination in his gaze. Let's go. We need to return to the house, to the place where it all happened. I'm sure there are more secrets buried there. The tension in the atmosphere seemed to dissipate a bit, but the gravity of the situation still hung over us. With a decisive movement, I took his hand and led him out of the room, toward the living room and then down the stairs. Each step resonated with the story we were about to unravel. The rain was still falling outside, but instead of intimidating us, it served as a reminder of the power nature had in shaping our destiny. As we reached the living room, Lucas stopped suddenly, his eyes fixed on a corner of the room where a small wooden table was covered with a cloth. Wait, he said, and I followed him as he approached the table. I've always suspected there was something hidden here. With careful movement, he pulled off the cloth, revealing an ancient, dusty, worn box. I never opened it, he confessed. But I always felt it was important. My heart raced, and anticipation grew. Let's open it, I said, adrenaline coursing through my veins. He hesitated, but then, with a determined move, he unlocked the box and lifted it. The sound of the creaking wood echoed through the room, and a wave of emotion washed over me. Inside the box, we found a collection of old letters and objects that seemed to belong to Annabelle and her lover. One letter stood out, sealed with an intact wax seal. Lucas carefully picked it up, his fingers trembling as he opened the envelope. This could be the key to everything, he said, his voice almost a whisper. He began to read aloud, and each word seemed to echo not just in the room but in our hearts. The letter spoke of love, of plans for escape, of a future that never materialized. But there was also a sense of despair, a warning that the path would not be easy. Annabelle was so full of hope, I murmured as Lucas continued reading. She and her lover were ready to face everything, but something went wrong. Yes, Lucas said, his voice heavy with emotion. And that hope turned into pain, not just for her, but for all of us. We need to honor that love, we need to tell her story and what really happened. The connection between us strengthened as we uncovered Annabelle's secrets. I knew we were on the verge of revealing something that could change everything. Not just for her spirit, but for us as well. The weight of the past was about to be lifted, and the truth was about to emerge, not just as a distant echo, but as a reality that could finally bring peace. Let's do this together, Lucas, I said, looking into his eyes. Let's free Annabelle and, at the same time, free you from this legacy of pain. He nodded, a new spark of determination in his gaze. Yes, together. Let's tell the truth. And as we held Annabelle's letter, a new hope began to blossom in our hearts, a step toward the healing and liberation we so desperately desired. Annabelle's story would not end in tragedy. Instead, it would become a symbol of hope and freedom, not just for her, but for both of us.